I was working the front desk at a hostel in Melbourne when this American guy walked in with 3 suitcases, 2 backpacks, and a guitar case. He looked at me and said, "Hey man, can you grab my bags?" I just stared at him. In Australia, we don't have bellhops at hostels. We barely have them at hotels. I told him the elevator was around the corner. He looked genuinely shocked. "You don't have staff for this?" he asked. I smiled and said, "Mate, you've got 2 arms and a working back." He muttered something about customer service standards as he dragged his bags away. Welcome to Australia. I've been collecting stories like this for years. Not to mock anyone, but to map the patterns behind culture shock. Most channels chase entertainment. I chase understanding. If that distinction matters to you, you're exactly where you should be. Another time, I was serving coffee at a cafe in Sydney. American woman comes in, orders a latte, and asks for it in a large. I make her a standard large, which in Australia is about 250 Petrol. She picks it up, looks at it like I just handed her a thimble, and says, "This is your large?" I nodded. She looked confused. In America, a large is like twice this size. I told her that's because we actually taste our coffee here, instead of just drinking milk with a coffee rumor in it. She didn't find that funny. She asked if I could make it bigger. I told her I could make her 2 coffees if she wanted. She left a 1-star review online saying Australians don't understand portion sizes. My cousin works at a wildlife sanctuary outside Brisbane. American family showed up for a tour. The dad saw a sign that said, "Do not touch the kangaroos," and immediately walked over to touch a kangaroo. My cousin stopped him. The guy looked offended. "I paid for this tour," he said. My cousin explained that wild animals aren't petting zoo props. The dad said, "But it's just standing there." "Yeah, mate, that's what animals do. Stand, exist, be alive. Doesn't mean you get to grab them because you bought a ticket." The kangaroo hopped away. The dad looked personally rejected. I had a mate working at the Australian border in customs. American traveler came through with a suitcase full of beef jerky, trail mix, and protein bars. All of it had to be declared. He didn't declare any of it. When my mate found it, the guy said, "It's just snacks, man." My mate explained that Australia has strict biosecurity laws. The guy rolled his eyes. "You guys are so paranoid." My mate told him we don't have rabies here, and we'd like to keep it that way. The guy huffed and said, "It's dried meat. What's the big deal?" "The big deal is we take our ecosystem seriously." Every piece of food got confiscated. The guy filed a complaint. It went nowhere. These stories happen every single day. Americans come to Australia expecting things to work the way they do back home. They don't. And when reality hits, it hits hard. This isn't about being mean. It's about culture shock, mismatched expectations, and the hilarious mess that happens when confidence meets confusion. Most people stop at laughing here. I look at what these moments actually reveal. How national identity shows up in the smallest interactions. I publish stories like this every week, decoded through that lens. If you're the kind of person who sees humor as data, hit subscribe. You'll fit right in. So buckle up, because we're diving into the funniest, most facepalm moments when American ego meets Aussie reality. I was working at a car rental place in Perth when an American couple came in to pick up their vehicle. They asked for an SUV. I showed them a Toyota RAV4. The husband looked at it and said, "That's not an SUV, that's a compact." I told him that in Australia, this is considered a mid-size SUV. He shook his head. Back home, an SUV is like a Tahoe or an Expedition. I explained that our roads are narrower, our parking spots are smaller, and fuel costs more. He wasn't having it. He spent 10 minutes trying to upgrade to something bigger. There wasn't anything bigger available. He took the RAV4 and complained the whole time. My friend works at a train station in Sydney. American tourist came up to her and asked when the next train to Melbourne was. She told him there's a train, but it takes about 12 hours. He looked horrified. 12 hours? Can't I just take a faster one? She explained that Australia is huge. Melbourne is over 500 miles away. He said, but you guys have high-speed trains, right? We don't. We have regular trains. He couldn't believe it. He said, in Europe, this would take like 2 hours. Mate, Australia isn't Europe. We've got distance here. He ended up booking a flight instead, still confused about why trains were so slow. I was managing a small hotel in Cairns. American guest checked in and immediately asked where the ice machine was. I told him we don't have ice machines in most Australian hotels. He looked at me like I just told him we don't have water. How do I get ice? He asked. I said he could ask the bar downstairs or buy some from a shop. He was stunned. Every hotel in America has an ice machine on every floor. I nodded. Cool, but you're in Australia now. He spent the next 2 days complaining about it. On checkout, he said the stay was good except for the ice situation. The ice situation. My sister worked at a beachside cafe in the Gold Coast. American family came in after spending the morning at the beach. The mom asked for the restroom. My sister pointed to the sign that said toilets. The mom looked confused. Where's the bathroom? My sister said, that's the toilet. The mom said, no, I need the restroom. This went on for a solid minute before my sister realized the confusion. We call it a toilet. They call it a bathroom or restroom. The mom finally went in, came back out, and said, you guys have weird words for everything. We're speaking English, mate. You're just using different English. Another story from the same cafe. American guy ordered a flat white. My sister made it. He took one sip and said, this tastes wrong. She asked what was wrong with it. He said, it's too strong. She explained that a flat white is a double shot of espresso with steamed milk. He said, I thought it was like a latte. It's not. It's stronger and smaller. He asked if she could remake it weaker. She offered him a latte instead. He took it, but he wasn't happy. Later, he left a review, saying the cafe didn't know how to make a proper flat white. A flat white is an Australian invention. We literally invented it. But sure, we don't know how to make it. I had a co-worker at the Melbourne hostel who told me about an American guest who complained about the voltage in his room. He'd brought his hairdryer from the States and plugged it in. It sparked and died. He came downstairs, furious, saying the outlet was broken. My co-worker explained that Australia uses 230 volts, not 1 to 10. The guy said, why would you use a different voltage? My co-worker just shrugged. Because we do. The guy wanted compensation for his hairdryer. He didn't get it. We have signs everywhere about voltage differences. He didn't read them. That's on him. My mate worked at a petrol station in Adelaide. American driver pulled in and asked the attendant to fill up the tank. The attendant looked confused. In Australia, you fill your own tank. The American guy waited in his car. After a minute, the attendant knocked on the window and told him he had to do it himself. The guy got out, annoyed, and said, in America, they do this for you in some states. The attendant said, cool, but this is Australia. The guy pumped his own gas for the first time in years. He looked so uncomfortable the whole time. I was bartending in a pub in Brisbane when an American bloke came in and ordered a beer. I asked which one. He said, just a beer. I showed him the tap list. 20 options. He looked overwhelmed. Just give me whatever's popular. I poured him a Carlton draft. He took a sip and said, this is warm. I told him it's not warm, it's just not ice cold. In Australia, we serve beer cool, not freezing. He said he couldn't drink it like this. I told him that's how beer is meant to be tasted. He asked if I could put ice in it. I refused. You don't put ice in beer. That's a crime. He left the drink half finished and went somewhere else. Probably found a place that served it colder. Shame. I was working at a restaurant in Sydney's CBD when an American group came in for dinner. They were loud, not just talking loud, but laughing loud, shouting across the table, making a scene. Other diners started looking over. In Australia, we tend to keep our volume down in restaurants. It's just the culture. One of the waitstaff gently asked them to lower their voices a bit. The group looked offended. One guy said, "We're just having fun." "What's the problem?" The waiter explained that other guests were trying to enjoy their meals. The American guy said, "In the States, restaurants are loud. That's normal." The waiter just nodded and walked away. They didn't lower their volume. They genuinely didn't see the issue. My friend worked at a movie theater in Melbourne. American couple bought tickets and went into the cinema with a massive bag of snacks they'd brought from outside. Chips, candy, drinks, the works. When my friend told them outside food wasn't allowed, the guy said, "Why not? We bought tickets." My friend explained its policy. The guy argued that in America, lots of people sneak in snacks. My friend said, "Yeah, but you're not supposed to." The guy kept pushing. Eventually, my friend let them keep the snacks because it wasn't worth the argument. But the entitlement was wild. They thought buying a ticket meant all rules were optional. I was on a tram in Melbourne when an American tourist got on and sat in the priority seating area. An elderly woman got on a few stops later. The tram was packed. The American didn't move. A local guy politely asked if he could give up his seat. The American looked confused. "Why? I got here first." The local guy explained it's priority seating for elderly and disabled passengers. The American said, "She looks fine to me." The old woman just stood there, holding the rail. Eventually, someone else gave up their seat. The American sat there the whole ride, completely oblivious to the social norm he just violated. My cousin worked at a gym in Brisbane. American members showed up every day and never wiped down the equipment after using it. In Australia, that's basic gym etiquette. You sweat on it, you clean it. My cousin reminded him a few times. The guy brushed it off. "It's not that big of a deal." My cousin explained that it is, actually. Other people use the equipment. The guy said, "The gym has cleaning staff for this." My cousin told him the staff clean at the end of the day, not after every single person. The guy finally started wiping things down, but he acted like it was a huge inconvenience. I was at a house party in Sydney. My mate invited an American exchange student. The guy showed up in his shoes, walked right into the house with his sneakers on. Everyone froze. In Australia, you take your shoes off at the door. It's automatic. My mate politely said, "Hey man, shoes off inside." The American looked around and saw everyone was barefoot or in socks. He said, "Oh, is this like an Asian thing?" My mate said, "No, it's an Australian thing. We just don't wear shoes inside." The guy took them off, but he seemed uncomfortable the whole night, like he thought floors were dirty or something. "Mate, your shoes are dirty." That's the point. My sister worked at a library in Adelaide. American student came in talking on his phone. Loud conversation. The librarian asked him to take it outside. He held up one finger like, "Give me a minute." He kept talking. The librarian asked again. He finally hung up and said, "What's the problem?" The librarian explained libraries are quiet spaces. He said, "I was just on a call. It wasn't that loud." The librarian said it was. He rolled his eyes and muttered something about being uptight. "Libraries are quiet everywhere, mate. This isn't an Australian thing. This is a universal thing." I was working at a cafe in Fremantle when an American guy came in, ordered a coffee, and then asked if he could sit at a table without buying anything else. I told him the table was fine as long as he bought something. He said, "I did buy something, a coffee." I explained that during peak hours, we prefer people to order food if they're staying a while, since tables are limited. He got defensive. In America, you can sit as long as you want if you buy something. I told him that's great, but this cafe has different rules. He sat anyway, stayed for 3 hours on one coffee, took up a 4-person table. We were packed the whole time. He didn't care. Another time at the same cafe, an American woman asked if we had free refills on coffee. I said no. She looked disappointed. Every cafe in America does free refills. I told her that's because American coffee is drip coffee made in huge batches. Our coffee is espresso-based, made one at a time. It costs more to make. She said, but I'm paying like $5 for this. I nodded. Yeah, because it's actual coffee. She didn't order a second one. Left a review saying we were overpriced. We're not overpriced. We're just not giving away free espresso. My mate worked at a bar in Darwin. American guy came in, ordered a round of drinks, and didn't tip. The bartender didn't care. We don't tip in Australia. Wages are fair. But then the American came back the next night and made a big deal about it. He said, I didn't tip yesterday because I wasn't sure if you guys do that here. The bartender said, we don't. The American looked relieved. Oh, good, because tipping culture is exhausting. The bartender agreed. But then the guy said, but like, if I wanted to tip, would you accept it? The bartender said sure. The guy didn't tip. He just wanted to talk about it. Weird flex. I was working at a hardware store in Sydney when an American guy came in asking for a 2x4. I asked him what length. He said 8 feet. I stared at him. We use metric in Australia. I asked if he meant 2.4 meters. He looked confused. No, 8 feet. I converted it for him. Sold him the timber. He looked at the measurements on the wood and said, why is everything in millimeters? I told him because we use the metric system. He said, that's so confusing. Mate, the metric system is literally based on tens. It's the easiest system in the world. He left muttering about how imperial made more sense. It doesn't. My friend worked at a car dealership in Melbourne. American customer came in looking at used cars. He saw a listing that said the car had done 60,000 kilometers. He asked if that was a lot. My friend said, no, that's pretty low. The guy said, wait, how much is that in miles? My friend did the math. About 37,000 miles. The guy relaxed. Oh, that's nothing. My friend nodded. The guy then asked why Australia uses kilometers. My friend said, because the whole world does except like 3 countries. The guy didn't have a response to that. I was managing a gym in Perth. American member asked how much the dumbbells weighed. I told him they were labeled in kilograms. He picked up a 20-kilo dumbbell and said, this feels heavy. How much is this in pounds? I told him about 44 pounds. He put it down and grabbed a 15-kilo one instead. Then he asked why we don't just use pounds. I said, because we're not American. He said it would make things easier for visitors. I said visitors can learn to convert. It's not hard. He spent the rest of his membership complaining about metric weights. My sister worked at a doctor's office in Brisbane. American patient came in for a checkup. The nurse asked for his weight and height. He said, I'm 180 pounds and 5'10". The nurse asked if he could convert that. He looked annoyed. You don't use pounds here? She said, no, we use kilograms. He didn't know his weight in kilograms. She had to convert it for him. Then she asked his height in centimeters. He had no idea. She converted that too. He said, this system is so backwards. She said, it's actually forwards. You're the one going backwards. I was working at a bakery in Adelaide. American guy came in and asked how hot the oven was. I said 180 degrees. He looked shocked. That's way too low. Bread needs like 350. I realized he meant Fahrenheit. I told him 180 Celsius is about 350 Fahrenheit. He said, why don't you just use Fahrenheit? I said, because Celsius makes sense. Water freezes at 0, boils at 100. Easy. He said Fahrenheit was more precise. I told him precision doesn't matter when you're baking bread. He didn't buy anything. My cousin worked at a pharmacy in Hobart. American tourist came in asking for Tylenol. My cousin said we don't have Tylenol in Australia. We have paracetamol. The tourist looked confused. What's paracetamol? My cousin explained it's the same thing, just a different name. The tourist said, why would you call it something different? My cousin said, why would you call it Tylenol? That's a brand name. The tourist didn't understand. My cousin handed him a box of Panadol. Same thing, different name. The tourist bought it, but kept saying it felt wrong. I had a mate working at a petrol station in Canberra. American driver pulled in and asked to fill up. After pumping, he came inside and said, "It cost me $80 to fill up. That's insane." My mate said, "Yeah, fuel's expensive here." The guy said, "In America, I pay like $40. My mate explained that we pay per liter, not per gallon, and our prices are higher. The guy said, "You guys get ripped off." My mate said, "Or maybe you guys just have cheaper fuel." The guy didn't like that answer. Another story from a mate in Darwin. American asked him how far it was to Cairns. My mate said about 2,700 kilometers. The American asked how long that would take to drive. My mate said about 30 hours, depending on stops. The guy said, "That's insane. It's the same country." My mate explained that Australia is massive. The guy said, "Yeah, but there must be a faster route." There isn't. It's a straight highway through the middle of nowhere. The guy couldn't wrap his head around the distance. He thought my mate was exaggerating. I was bartending in Sydney when an American ordered a pint. I poured him a standard Australian pint, which is 570 millimeters. He looked at it and said, "This isn't a pint." I told him it is. He said, "In America, a pint is 16 ounces. I said, "In Australia, a pint is 570 milliliters, which is about 20 ounces. He looked confused. I explained that the US uses a different pint measurement. He said, "That doesn't make sense. A pint is a pint." I said, "Not internationally." He drank it anyway, but kept muttering about how nothing was standard here. "Mate, your measurements are the non-standard ones." I was working the checkout at a bookstore in Melbourne when an American guy came up with a stack of travel guides. He looked at the price tags and said, "Why is everything so expensive here?" I told him our minimum wage is higher, so costs reflect that. He said, "But I'm paying like $30 for a book." I said, "Yeah, and the person selling it to you makes $25 an hour." He paused, thought about it, then said, "I guess that makes sense." It was the first time I'd seen an American actually stop and think about how a different system might work. Most of the time, they just compare everything to the States and call it wrong. That's the thing about these stories. They're not about Americans being bad people. They're about assumptions. When you grow up in one system, one culture, one way of doing things, it's hard to imagine that other places operate differently. And that's fine. But when you travel, you've got to adapt. You can't walk into another country and expect it to bend to your normal. Australia isn't America. We've got our own ways of doing things. Some of them are better. Some of them are just different. But they're ours. The funniest part is when confidence meets confusion. When someone is so sure they're right that they can't see, they're in a completely different context. Like the guy who argued about the pint size. Or the woman who insisted we didn't know how to make a flat white. Or the bloke who thought our power outlets were broken. They weren't being malicious. They just couldn't step outside their own perspective long enough to realize the world doesn't revolve around their home country. And look, Australians do the same thing when we travel. We go to America and get confused about tipping, or why portions are massive, or why everyone drives everywhere. Culture shock goes both ways. But the difference is, most of us expect to be confused. We know we're in a different place. We adjust, we ask questions. We don't assume our way is the universal way. These stories keep happening every single day. Americans come to Australia with big expectations, loud confidence, and a belief that things should work the way they do back home. And then reality smacks them in the face. Sometimes they laugh about it. Sometimes they complain. But either way, it makes for great stories. Stories that remind us how different the world can be, even when we're all speaking the same language. Well, mostly the same language. Because apparently, toilet and bathroom are two very different things. That's what this channel is built for. decoding those little misunderstandings that expose the bigger truths about how humans think. I'll keep telling these stories whether you subscribe or not, but the people who do, they're the ones who keep evolving how they see the world, and trust me, these stories never stop coming. Every tourist season brings a fresh wave of culture clashes, confused questions, and moments that make you wonder how people can be so confident about things they know nothing about. But hey, that's humanity. We're all just trying to figure it out.